and gentlemen, hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Whoop, whoop. It's the sound of the police. Yes, fantastic. I tend to introduce debates as if there were MMA matches, so I'm sorry about that. But we have a much more sophisticated theme, not that MMA is not sophisticated, but we have a sophisticated interdisciplinary theme that touches, I think, every single one of the kind of Homo sapiens exploratory spirit. And it is both art and space. The two have a huge amount in common, and we'll be exploring those things. We'll be talking today about the mission that was meant to fly to the moon of artists that did not end up happening, but we're going to talk about the lessons learned, how that worked out, and what we can kind of extrapolate from that for our everyday lives, every single one of us. I'm an archaeologist, so I love to put everything into historical context. And I think it's important in terms of the question of why artists should fly into space. Space is now understood as a very hard science kind of thing. Maths, physics, and like all that very kind of hard, calculated understanding of the world that we live on and that we look up to. But if you want a little bit of history, we have people like Galileo Galilei, or the first illustrations of the moon from the 17th century. It was the artist's domain of bringing space closer to us, closer to the Renaissance societies. So it was actually always really the domain of the artists. In the modern world, we have the NASA art programs, so even modern space agencies are very much understanding the needs of humanities and the need of understanding humans if we do want to conquer space. For example, who here has seen the three-body problem? Right, bingo, there we go. You see that it's much more of a human problem than it is a scientific one. We can spend trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars building rockets that will take us to Mars or to the moon, but what will we do when we get there? Will we kill ourselves because someone stole your breakfast ration, so you poke them with the fork in the eye, like we've been doing for the last hundreds of thousands of years as a human species? Will we argue? Will we love each other? Will we be jealous of each other? Will we survive? That is the fundamental question that only the humanities can answer. So I want to really big up the interdisciplinary aspect of all this, but I will be just asking the humble questions. We have two phenomenal panelists who will be answering those for us. Before I reveal them, I would like to give you a little bit more context onto the Dear Moon mission, just so you can understand a little bit more about what's going on. And in advance, I speak so quickly that I'm so sorry to the AI. I know it's not sentient, but I feel sorry for it, that it has to translate my fantastic speech. Right, so artists in space.
It has been 50 years since Apollo 8 achieved lunar orbit in 1968. The time has come for civilians to fly to the moon. In 2023, SpaceX will launch the world's first private lunar mission with its spacecraft, BFR. The first passenger will be Japanese entrepreneur Yusaku Maezawa, a globally renowned art collector who believes art has the power to promote world peace. Maezawa made a bold decision. A painter, photographer, musician, film director, fashion designer, Maezawa will invite artists that represent Earth on his journey to the moon. The distance to the moon is 240,000 miles. The crew will spend a week in space. What will they feel when they see the moon? When they see Earth in full view? And what will they create? Their works will certainly become a legacy for humankind. An awe-inspiring, global, universal art project is about to begin. Dear Moon.
Ladies and gentlemen, so that's the context. It's very moving. There's been a lot of changes that happened, and we'll be talking about all of those today. But the most important and thrilling thing is that we have two members of that day crew mission that we're honored to have here with us today. Let me please invite onto the stage the first prominent, amazing human being and friend who is not only someone that has pioneered this ethos of moonshot in more ways than one in the Czech Republic. He's an artist, producer, social innovator, choreographer. If you're Czech, Zimmerman kind of springs to mind. He is very, very versatile. He's a fantastic human being as well. And that person is none other than Yemi A.D.
J'sors la bécane, j'fume la peur. J'm'en bats les couilles, c'est dangereux sa mère. J'vois que des barreaux au enfer. La bécane crie et j'sors de l'enfer. Sur un gros fer, bah ouais. J'sors la bécane, j'fume la peur. J'm'en bats les couilles, c'est dangereux sa mère. J'vois que des barreaux au enfer. La bécane crie et j'sors de l'enfer. Sur un gros fer, bah ouais, bah ouais.
Hello, hello, hello. I wanna talk to you about something that we speak a lot about, and that is, no? And that is movement. Life happens when you add rhythm to the movement. Whether it is the celestial bodies turning around each other, the rhythm of act of procreation, rhythm of hearts beating in our chests. When our movements get in rhythm, when we get synced, something powerful happens. Like a wordless language at the precipice of mathematics and love and wonder that allows us to understand each other unconditionally. For the past 20 years, I went around the world to meet with indigenous tribes. I've been with them when they were celebrating, receiving and welcoming new life. I've been with them through their ceremonies and rituals, or when they were mourning a loved one. And when I looked really close, in all that movement, I discovered another kind of intelligence. But even here, tonight, there's so much you can say about a boy or girl just by how he or she is walking down the street. Movement changes perspective. Movement of our bodies, our body language, the way we move other people, how we move closer to things, gaining proximity, all that movement changes who we are. There is freedom in the movement. And freedom is a condition necessary for life to thrive. Hello. So, as Clara said, all this came with a very interesting twist that both me and Karim are still kind of working through. And for those of you who haven't seen my work, it's about movement in all different kinds of spaces and contexts, whether it is the movement, social movement, or whether it's the artistic movement. Work with Kanye West. We could also speak about a lot of freedom, but that's for another discussion. And Bohemian Gravity, which was the piece that I used to apply for Dear Moon mission. Similarly, like we have in the room many of young leaders from Moonshot, I also applied with my own project, with my own venture, which was a piece that was inspired by ballet and contemporary dance. And it looked like this. It was about mothers and sons, about society, about inclusion, about dreaming of freedom and the relationship between us and our freedom. Going through life and either losing freedom, gaining freedom, giving up freedom, ignoring freedom, fighting for freedom, that was the piece. And another project, which is why we are here, was the Moonshot Platform. And that's why I'm so proud that it was Sarah to introduce me on the stage, because Sarah is one of the 30 finalists of Moonshot Platform from the year 2022-2023. And for those of you who don't know Moonshot, Moonshot is global accelerator for young social innovators who are ambitious enough to want to change the world around them. And many of them are sitting here today. Let's give it up for them. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yemi, for the warm words. And yeah, welcome everyone from Moonshot, because you're the new proud generation that's going to take us to the moon and beyond. So I'm very happy that you're all sitting in the audience. Let's move swiftly on to the next panelist, because Moonshot is something that brought us all here together, along with Yemi and along with our next guest, who is Karim Iliya. And I met him for the first time yesterday on a train, as you do, from Prague. He told me about the amazing work that he does, and I would not do it justice introducing it in any shape or form. So all I'm going to say to you is that he's a photographer, filmmaker, and the founder and kind of running person of Kogia, which is an amazing kind of ocean conservation NGO. And he's just done some wonderful things that some of us can only dream of. So Karim, if I can please invite you on stage, introduce yourself, and share with us the amazing work that you do, please.
Thank you. I will not be dancing, fortunately for you, but I would like to show you some of the work that I do. I'm a photographer and filmmaker, and I run an ocean conservation nonprofit. And what I try and do in my photography is to show people the beauty of this natural world, all of the places, the animals, and the plants that maybe we don't normally spend time to look at, and to try and help give them a voice in nature so that we can connect and develop an appreciation for this planet. I find that we, as humans, sometimes feel disconnected from nature, and that we are not a part of it. You know, we have all of the luxuries and comforts of modern life, but it's important to remember that we did come from these places. I spend a big focus of my time documenting the lives of humpback whales. I see them as a way to connect people to the oceans and to get them to fall in love with the place. And when you protect a species like a humpback whale, then you also protect all of those other little species that don't get as much attention. Now, if you're wondering what this is milk from a humpback whale. The mother was down below resting. The calf did not drink the milk, and it started to float up. And this is something that I had been wanting to see for a very long time. And when the opportunity was there, I dove down and I started filming the milk when all of a sudden the calf came up, and I managed to get this photo. Now, curiosity definitely did get the better of me, and I tasted the milk. I did also give some of it to my boat captain so he could send it to a lab and test out to see, are there any toxins in it. We live on a fantastic planet full of wonders, like the Northern Lights. And it's all this planet. What I've realized when traveling and photographing and documenting is that everything is connected. Sorry, one moment. This does not look like a place that an animal could thrive, and yet these coyotes in Mexico, they go through the sand dunes and the desert and forage and hunt for food. Some say they catch crabs by using their tails to entice the crabs out of their holes and then catch them, which is a fascinating behavior. I'm also I'm very much in love with volcanoes, which is a thing that is a bit dangerous. At the same time, I get drawn in like a bug going towards the light. There's just something about when you see molten rock that glows in the dark and the sounds that come from it as it flows. It's a place where geology, which normally moves at a glacial pace, is all of a sudden taking place rapidly. And you can watch new land form itself while simultaneously destroying old land. And from that, life does thrive. We have islands like Hawaii, and Iceland, where greenery grows and birds come and animals make their homes, and humans that are also attracted to volcanoes, both like my friend Haukon over here, who's maybe a bit close to it, but also people who farm the land beneath volcanoes and make a life for themselves. I spend a lot of time also trying to tell stories of animals. This was an elephant in Cambodia that had to work, not so voluntarily, carrying people around, and trying to capture those stories and those emotions from the perspective in a way that we can understand them and empathize with them. And then I also photograph people around the world, different cultures, daily life of people everywhere, because what might be normal for us can be fascinating for someone else in another place. And then I spend a lot of time underwater trying to show these worlds, like this turtle that was eating algae off of the rocks as waves go overhead. And sometimes we think of nature as this faraway place, but this is actually a surfing beach. And just above this, there are surfers, which makes it a little difficult sometimes to also avoid getting hit on the head. And then, I spend a lot of time also focusing on humpback whales and other animals that, this is a striped marlin. It's an animal that people often like to eat. It is also fascinating underwater. They turn their stripes on and off, and they hunt together, coordinated, and they pick off these little fish. And it's very interesting to see the balance between life and death on such a desperate level taking place just with fractions of a second and small amounts of time. And then in nature, we also see a lot of curiosity from animals like these sea lions that are playing with a starfish. For reference of size, if you're wondering how big whales are, this is my friend Brianna with a humpback whale calf. So this is the baby. You can imagine how big the mother is. Thank you so much. I think we have a few more photos. This is the Starship rocket that we were going to fly in, but I think that's good for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karim. Thank you. If you could please take your seat. Yemi as well. If you could sit down, gentlemen, and we're going to get into it. Before we do get into it, just a couple of housekeeping things, because it's always good to have order. We find ourselves on the New York City stage, so thank you very much for having us and hosting us. There is something that also brings us together apart from Moonshot, where a lot of us come from, which is the Aspen Institute. There's an opportunity to win a scholarship for the Aspen Young Leaders program that I had the honor of attending, and a lot of us in the room as well. So if you want to attend that, you will have an opportunity to fill in a form and basically sign up. So definitely use that opportunity to get that scholarship. And also, I shall be asking you cheeky questions at the end, so think of something clever to wow your peers. Right, and in the meantime, I've got a tricky question for our lovely panelists. It was an emotional journey that you've both been on, both in your lives and with the amazing things that you have achieved, but also the whole application process to the Dear Moon crew. What I find really difficult as an anthropologist and archaeologist is to understand humanity and be able to measure it at the same time. Some things about us are just immeasurable, not quantifiable. What was the application process to Dear Moon, and how were they picking you out of all the thousands of people that wanted to go, to make sure that you were the right people for the job?
So we don't really, I don't think we fully know what's happening on the other side. I remember Peter, who is here, one of our photographers, cinematographers, also amazing artist, brought me this article and say, hey, you're doing these things, these events here, you should fly to the moon. And he showed me the article, and I was like, huh. And I thought about it for maybe 6 months before I got courage to actually make the steps and start to search. And I didn't find any opening. I just know there was the article. And when finally it appeared, and I could see it, I just went online and I signed up. From the moment I agreed with myself that I'm going to do it, to the moment that they have published the open call, was like a year. Mm-hmm. And in between that, we founded Moonshot Platform because it was pandemic, and we were inspired by this act of this sponsor who was willing to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to bring artists to space, to change perceptions of humans about Earth, seeing Earth from the space. Many people believe that going to space is wasting of money, but it's very interesting to see the relationship between our first space trip and when, for example, the Earth Day was announced for the first time. The first picture from the space was like 69 or something like that, and the first Earth Day was 1970. So there is a strong relationship between promoting Earth as a whole, seeing Earth from the space, and because I just was in love with this idea, and then there was pandemic, and I thought we're all gonna die. I was thinking, okay, let's just do Moonshot Platform, so we do moonshots that we can do here without flying to space. So that was my focus. And then when finally the application process was opened, I remember going, filling in. Then they asked me for another piece of work, so I shared my portfolio, shared photos. Some of you've seen, started to work on my Bohemian Gravity project because I felt like I think there will be a lot of people who want to fly to space. And if I want to win, I have to come forward with something extraordinary. So I invested a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort into this application process, which I not always do, but I felt like this was an opportunity that was worth to really invest in. And I remember all this time it was just like an interesting fun to go back and forth with the office. And when I was going from first round to second round, third round, fourth round, I remember it got really serious when they asked me to do my medical checkups. And when I started to go to different hospitals and do my x-rays and different types of examinations that I've never heard of. And you don't want to know what these are. And then eventually the interview with Yusaku Maezawa. So that was my experience with the application process.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Yemi.
I didn't think I would ever be getting an ultrasound, but they were checking the organs, and
I felt like pregnant,
I mean, well, Karim, it's interesting you showed us a lot of beautiful photos from the ocean. Now, a bit of trivia, the ocean's actually less explored and less understood by us than our immediate space. So you're a bigger kind of like spaceman than a lot of the people who have been to space. Tell me, how did you come across this? Like, how did you apply, and how did you find the whole process as well?
So it started when I was in university, and I was sitting in a tree with one of my best friends, drinking beer, as you do, talking about your dreams. And she was telling me about how she wanted to go to the Olympics. And I told her that one day I was going to take a photo of the Earth from the perspective of the moon. So 10 years later, she sent me a link to the Dear Moon project. Now, funny story, she's from Czech Republic. So she saw Yemi's promotion of the Dear Moon project and then sent it to me saying, well, here's your opportunity to do that. And so I applied, of course, thinking, yes, me and everybody else is applying, but I gave it a go. And you know, each step of the process, I was quite happy that I got onto the next stage. And yeah, then it started getting serious. There was the medical checkups and the meeting. We had a meeting in person in Texas, and the numbers were quite small. And at that point, then I started to think about how, you know, the difference between being selected and not selected is not that much, because the starting pool was approximately 1 million people. So then when you're down to, you know, the last 30, the last 20, it's really a marginal difference. So that became quite intense. But you know, I took each step of the way and put myself forward and found out that I had been selected. And that was an incredible moment, because I was also in Argentina. I was filming orca hunting elephant seals, which will be out soon on a Netflix series. And I was actually living by the moon's schedule. Our meals would shift every day about 40 minutes or so, because we had to keep up with the tides. And so our sleep schedule was changing, our meal schedule was changing. And when I found out, I was by myself on a farm in Argentina. And it was a lot of emotion. It was very exciting. And then we were thrown into the world of space, where we got to meet astronauts and flight control and engineers building rockets, and also speak with people on the street in Texas that were so excited about this space launch and about this mission. And that really changed my perspective and helped me grow as a person, and to start to understand, you know, what space means to people, and how much it means to so many people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. You mentioned the orca, you mentioned Bohemian Gravity. We will get to your individual perceptions of what you wanted to bring back home from space and what you do in your everyday lives as well. Before I do that, we see the phenomenal photo of the little boy being dwarfed by the feet of humanity, which are these beautiful spaceships. Now, sci-fi started to be written. There's actually a bit of sci-fi that's over 2,500 years old that was written during the Roman period that is about space exploration, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
But you know, then Jules Verne and the Belle Epoque and the New Siècle started to really produce space sci-fi at a bigger rate. And we love space. We love the rockets, and we don't care if they're a little bit behind schedule. It's just cool. How did you feel getting to that world? That, like, you know, I just gawk at Twitter, and I'm always like, oh, well, wow, there's another spaceship launch that just happened. It's still very abstract for me. What was it like seeing this in real life?
So I had a really big shift in my perception of what my decision mean when I came to the launch. It was very interesting, because we were invited. And I went to 2 different launches. I went to the launch in Kazakhstan, in Baikonur. It's where the Gagarin would take off from. And then I went, which is the oldest cosmodrome. It's very funny, because in the English dictionary, cosmonaut means a Russian astronaut. But in Czech Republic, everybody says cosmonaut. So it's kind of interesting cultural joke. So that was the oldest one, and we had great stories there. I think we should share those stories if there is time, because it's really fun to be in Kazakhstan, in Baikonur, and see them do their job. And then we went to SpaceX Boca Chica and saw the biggest beast. This is just the top part, yeah. So it's like a building of, I don't know, 50 stories or 60 stories.
I think it's 120 meters from the top to the bottom.
And it's 9 meters in diameter. So let's say that from that place to here, it's like it's actually like you're sitting maybe a little bit smaller. So it's really generous space. So when we came there, and I actually used this epiphany for a lot of my work. I was standing there. We were there. first it was scratched, right, because some valve has frozen, and then we waited 2 more days. It's very funny. Your life has to change completely, because when you are signed up for it, your schedule doesn't matter. You have to be ready to do whatever you need to do when they tell you to do it. So it's like your other project has to be sidelined. If you decide to go, you just have to be on the call. And ideally move close enough so you don't have to be there, because Boca Chica there's nothing. So you don't want to live there. So you need to be in like Austin or Dallas or Houston, and then be able to just jump on the plane and come when it's happening, and then be ready that it's scratched. So I was there. We were there with our crewmates, and then finally there was the countdown, and the countdown can be terminated at every moment. And there's thousands of people around, like people for babies in little strollers, and then the binoculars, and they have these whole like little tents, and it's like a whole world. And then you are certain. How far are you? Like 5 kilometers?
Yeah, I think 8 kilometers was the closest we could be.
Yeah, there in Baikonur, much closer. So we're there, and then when it ignites, you feel these waves, like different waves. The sonic wave, it feels like your eardrums are gonna pop. This like trembling, like a ground and air and everything, and the animals, and it just feels like this wave. And I know this sensation of having the idea of me leaving Earth in my mind, like an idea, and as this wave went through me, it went from my mind into my stomach. And now I started to feel the decision that I had in my body. It was a very interesting shift. And I still feel like a lot of information we carry, we don't, when it's here, it's not really, you don't really know. I feel like when it's here, then you really like.
Yeah, I think you've really set the stage for the next question. Thank you for sharing that story. How about yourself? How did you experience it?
A similar feeling. First, when we went to see the rocket, they scrubbed the launch, as Yemi said, and they actually, at first, it felt a bit sad, you know, because we'd built up all of this excitement. But then they said we could go, and they brought our crew over to the rocket, and there was a security checkpoint. We just went past it because we were with the SpaceX people, and then there was this red line, and there was no people there, and the sounds and steam coming from this rocket, it felt like a dragon that was alive, that was sleeping and angry, and as it was off-gassing, it would make these crazy sounds. It was very, very intimidating, and that was the first moment that I felt the power of it and get a perspective of the size. And then 2 days later, when the launch happened, just before the launch happened, the woman who was taking care of us, we were calling her our astronaut mom, she handed me earplugs and said, you should put these in, because if the rocket explodes, it's going to be very loud. So I put the earplugs in, and I had never seen a rocket launch because I wasn't able to make it to Baikonur. And as the rocket went up, you know, you see it, and then the sound comes, and then there's this crackling sound, and then you feel it in your body. And my first reaction was, are we too close? Is this safe? And we're at 8 kilometers. And then my next thought was, oh no, we're going on that thing. So it was this moment where I realized the power and the weight of it. But at the same time, I thought, you know what? I will be scared when the moment comes. There's no way around that. But also, I'd always dreamed of going up into space to see our planet from above, and to get that perspective and to understand this home that every human is, and every animal and everything we know that is life. Basically, everything we know is here on this planet.
Thank you. Both those stories, yes, let's give it a round of applause to both of those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Both those stories very much kind of echo of a change of perspective. And I've got a little bit of a segue. Remember I mentioned the ancient Roman bit of science fiction? Because I'm a bit of OCD about times. I said 2,500 years, that's nonsense. I got spooked that I didn't remember, so I made that up. It's actually 2nd century AD. But it's a nice segue into our next question. It was Lucien of Samosata, who was a Syrian author, and he wrote about these random people going beyond the Pillars of Heracles, which are the modern Straits of Gibraltar. and encountering Endymion, the king of the moon, and Phaeton, the king of the sun, warring over, in this galactic war, over what is essentially the colonization of the morning star. And he starts kind of explaining about these alien species. This is 2nd century AD. And we can see that creativity and like using space as a metaphor for perspective and notions of freedom and notions of self-determination has been here for thousands and thousands of years. We're not the first to come up with this. And that leads me as a segue to both of you. What was your aim and what is your aim in using space, using this mission and being a part of it? And it's very close to both of you. What do you want to give to humanity through this? What was the perspective that you want to achieve?
As Yemi had mentioned, the Earthrise photo by Bill Anders, I believe, on the Apollo 8 mission, where he took this photo, I'm sure everybody's seen it, of the Earth rising from behind the moon. And that changed people's perspectives about where we are, what this planet means. And it really, as Yemi said, kickstarted the environmental movement. And these kinds of things can shift people's perspective. And what I think about is that those people that went up there were mostly military men. They were not artists, they were not musicians, and the work that they produced just on the side of everything else they were doing inspired so many people to get into the sciences, to become engineers and physicists, inspired people to dream and to create art and to write and to do all kinds of things. I don't remember your question anymore. Sorry.
It's fine. I don't remember them myself. No, I wanted to ask, what was your specific perspective and your plan for when you were in the rocket, orbiting the moon?
Right.
What was it?
Yes. So for me, what I really hoped to achieve was two things. One, document the trip and do justice to this opportunity that we were going to have to fly in a rocket, and be the first civilians to go around the moon, to go farther away than any human had been. But also to use that in my conservation work, which might sound contradictory, but I think that telling the stories of planet Earth, I've spent so much time documenting pieces of this planet that I wanted to show, to tell the full story and to show what this place means and how it all connects, and to use the voice that I would have from this trip to try and advocate for all the other little creatures and ecosystems that don't have their own voice.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yemi.
Yeah, I just can't. I think one of the best things that happened to me through this mission is meet people like Karim, because like everyone out of this million people, the people that came through, like they are like this, and it just stops my mind to see like the places you've been and things you've seen and the proximity that you are achieving with nature. It's just mind-blowing. So for me, it was just, I always go back to my own life to remain authentic to my journey. So for me, it was nothing that I'm like making up. It was just simply thinking what Virgil said, right? We worked together for 5 years, and he said that I do this, everything I do is for the 15-year version of myself. Like, so for me, it's like, even before, like for a 7-year-old version of myself, like I wanted to show that like a boy from, Sudeten land, which is used to be occupied part of Czech Republic by Germans in the Second World War. I was born in that strip of land, being with single mother and then being able to go and fly first to Hollywood, then to Colorado, and then to go to space around the moon. I was dyslexic. I had lots of issues, problems when I was growing up. I dropped out of high school. I didn't finish my school. I had a lot of problems, and I love to connect with young people who think that they cannot maneuver out of their circumstance and situation. And I know that in my country, I never really had any black people around myself. Someone who I was looking up was Václav Havel, because he was our president. He came from a jail to become a president. So for me, it was like that underdog, you know, even though he was from a rich family, but he decided to be, you know, like the poet and writer, and then kind of helped us pass through this Velvet Revolution, and then create like a idea of unity and purpose in Czech Republic that I haven't felt for a long time after. And I was just a small boy, and I was like, yeah, it's possible. It's possible that if I, you know, do the right thing, or I keep my values, I can go. So I was thinking that maybe for other young people, I can show them that it doesn't matter where you start your journey, but where you decide that you want to head. You know, that even if you start in minus, it doesn't mean that you have to end in minus or be less than others. And that with imagination, because my driver was always arts, was always imagining new, that with imagination that your potential is limitless. And that's why Bohemian Gravity, that's why Moonshot Platform, that's why everything else, because I felt, well, both on the side of arts, where we're talking from heart to heart, and it's emotional, so you can't really always want the result. Because if you do art and you end up wanting result in the end, it's a craft, like making a table. It can be also art, but it's functional. But then there is another layer of art, the way you create it, you just so full of something, you just want to express it. And then that expression is going to touch people you don't even know they exist. And then you're going to connect, or they are going to connect. It creates like things that you cannot come up with your mind. And then there is functional, which was for me Moonshot Platform, which was like, okay, let's measure it, let's be strategic, let's be systemic, and so on.
Fantastic, thank you. And you mentioned the Czech nature, and I want to bounce off that a little bit. Obviously, space is complicated, and you don't always have that ship on time. And people love to hate. And unfortunately, in Czech Republic, there is that kind of like trait that we have. We're phenomenal and very talented in a lot of ways, as you can see in fine specimens such as Yemi. But we do also sometimes wish each other bad luck. You see the amount of toxicity on social media, and no matter what you think about Elon Musk, like the feat of SpaceX is phenomenal. And even though when this mission didn't happen, there was a lot of haters online. Both of these panelists experienced that hate. People kind of saying, I told you, you'll never get to go. And people kind of seeing it as a billionaire's kind of child play. It's a shame, because we have seen what that moonshot does. We have seen what is possible. I would like to ask both of you how you dealt with the fact that the mission was cancelled, but how, regardless of that, you still achieve what you just both described in your everyday lives, and you don't physically have to be there.
Go ahead.
Well, it had a lot of different layers. When you work for something for maybe 4 years, first you get the courage, then you feel like you were born for it. Everything you experience in your life have brought you to this moment to be ready. You know, my dance career and going to castings, be ready to fill in those questionnaires, being on time for once in a lifetime. Like pass all these gates, you know, you feel like you are destined. And meeting all these people, meeting Elon Musk, going to meeting astronauts, and fly around the world, speak about space, and so on. And then you're like, okay, sorry, this ticket is, we're gonna take it back. So you feel like a tremendous loss. You feel you are mourning that loss. Then there was also fear that you're gonna disappoint people, fear of the haters. There is a guilt, because you have placed into the spectrum for your country also bringing that flag on a world stage. And we are 10 million people, Czech Republic, and then Nigeria, like 200 million people. But more people, like more in Czech Republic, people would know and be kind of feeling this thing. So I was like so sad, because I was like, I'm disappointing everyone. And it took me some time before realizing that this is not actually it. I haven't been kicked out of the mission. The mission is not happening. And I say, baby, it's not over till it's over. And this is not over. And I was realizing that, okay, one doors are closed, other doors open. And as they say in the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be destroyed, neither created, and can only be transformed. And as an artist, I think my role is not to close my eyes and so like, oh, pity me, you know, I'm like, they are so bad, I am like such a victim. It's more like about, so there is a white canvas again. The rain came and just brought the watercolors down, and it's white again. But the energy is here. I'm stronger, I have more friends, I've been put through so much, and I've also won. And that win no one can take away. So what am I gonna paint? Which doors am I gonna open? And that's what I sit with now. And yeah, so I didn't want to shy away from that energy. And I wanted to also important thing was for me, around me, leaders always show their face when they win, but they never really show face when they lose. And I was thinking, what do I want to be for those young people? Because I was always like, I want to be a good example. And then when I lost the mission, I was almost like, I'm going to take a hot bath and I'm going to just delete on Instagram for a while. Because I don't want to deal with that. But then I changed my mind and I was, no, I'm going to show face. I'm going to be there and I'm going to receive whatever is coming and react. And I think the only suggestion, if you go through things like that, is do not internalize, because it hardly ever is about you. Even though it's always about you, it's always also never about you. You know, so for me it was easier also because other circumstances in my life in that moment. There was a big loss of life that I had in my close environment. I just allowed these emotions to just go through. Just go through, don't keep it.
Thank you. And I think the conservation of energy is here with Moonshot, right? Everyone in the audience. Yes, good. The idea lives on, and as Yemi said, it's not over till it's over. Karim, how about yourself?
That was beautifully said, Yemi. It was definitely, there was a lot of emotions going on in finding out that the mission was canceled. And there was, this period of time when I would look up at the moon and I would start to dream and think about all of the possibilities. And our lives got so wrapped up in this world of space. And it was very devastating to look up at the moon when it was canceled and then to feel sad. I didn't want to look at the moon and feel sad. And so, we went through all of the ranges of emotions at different paces, sadness and anger and loss, and tried not to dwell on any self-pity. But what was also a difficult thing was seeing everyday people and how they were excited and inspired by it. My brother has 2 children, and without even any question in their minds, one of them said, I'm going to go to Mars one day. And that idea where it's normally, a 5-year-old might say that and people might think it's a ridiculous thought, but here she is seeing her uncle who's going to go to the moon, and all of a sudden it's not ridiculous at all. Or just people on the street, the ramen chef that when I would go and get ramen would ask me like, oh, so how's that going? When is the moon project happening? And of course, there was a period of time where we found out about it. It was very brief, but it was still, even in those few days before it's announced, people still ask you. And then you have to, I had a conversation with Yemi, and how do I deal with this? How do I, and so, and Yemi reminded me, like, this is not just about you, it's about other people. And so, have that excitement that you had about this project, because it's become bigger than ourselves. That being said, I got to meet incredible people on this project, like Yemi and the rest of the crew, and all of these doors that opened up. And I do think that this project is not closed forever. I am personally hopeful that I can be a part of something like this, and that we can salvage this project, and that this idea of artists going into space is not a ridiculous idea. It's something that needs to be done, because it will inspire more generations to do all kinds of work here on Earth that I think will make life better for everybody.
Karim, Yemi, thank you. Now, my Colombo investigation part is over, and I would like to hand over to you. We've got 9 minutes before they start blasting music over there, so you got to be quick and snappy with your questions, but I think we've got a chance for 2. So, who's feeling brave? Who wants to wow their peers with a snappy question? Wow, there's a lot. Okay, there's a gentleman over there, coincidentally enough from Moonshot. Please, give us your best.
Okay, yes, good. Thank you so much. That was super enlightening. I loved hearing all that. This is a question for Karim. Short story first. Once I've heard a story from the Inuit tribe in Alaska, and it went something like this, that they had developed such a relationship with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's either humpback whales or orcas, to the extent that there was such a deep relationship, and the people could communicate with the animals, or the animals knew when the people needed food. And they started observing there was this dynamic where in instances, instead of the Inuit people hunting down the whales, they would engage in something like a bit of a sacrifice and provide themselves to the hunters. So my question to you is, have you observed in your experience any dynamic with the animals that you have observed and studied and the humans in which there is something like this kind of altruism that exists beyond language, that exists beyond species, that we can look at as inspiration for how we can build a more collaborative world with the natural world? Thank you.
Oh, that is a complex question to answer in a very short period of time. But since you mentioned humpback whales, there are instances well documented of humpback whales taking care and protecting other species for no other reason than what we can describe as altruism. Protecting sea lions from orcas or other animals. And so I think definitely we often separate ourselves from nature and we say like we humans are above nature, but we are still a part of it, and you know what we do and how we feel and how we interact with the world is also part of nature. And I think that connection can help us, if we explore that more, can help us to take better care both of the planet and of each other as people.
Thank you so much. Thank you. One last question. Keep it snappy, ladies and gentlemen. It's your time to shine. It's also being videoed, so this is your eternal fame. Yes, is that a cheeky hand up in the background there? Yes, please. That corner seems to be very active. Thank you. Someone give Mark a microphone, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. Knowing both of you, I have zero doubt that this chapter is not completely closed and there's much more to come. As you've talked about, the journey has been very, very interesting for you so far. So my simple question to each of you is, what was your favorite lesson learned or unexpected experience that you've gotten on this journey so far?
It's for me?
For each.
For both. Okay. You want me to start?
Up to you.
So, there are so many. It's very hard to pick one. I love funny moments. I just love funny moments. And one of the most funny moments was the one in Kazakhstan. So you go first because mine might be long.
Okay. Yeah, I think there were a lot of lessons in this, and I don't think I've learned yet all the lessons that have come out of it. I think some of that is in meeting the people who are part of this and seeing people who have dedicated their lives towards space or other people or conservation, and watching that craft of people who are so... I thought that there would be people who would want to be in our shoes, and in this process, seeing people who were so excited for us, and also people who had no interest in going to space because it is a harsh environment, and yet they were still so supportive of us. And even though there was a lot of, tricky aspects and people saying like, this is unrealistic, there was still so much support. And that was something that was inspiring to see.
Absolutely. So, okay, so very short story. So we are in Kazakhstan, and we are there with Tim Dodd. It's Everyday Astronaut. Go to his website. He has a beautiful YouTube channel. And we look at him, and we are like pretty close to the place, and he's like nervous. So we ask him, why are you nervous? He says, we're too close to the rocket. Like it might hurt us, you know? And we're like looking around, there's like 100 people, not like a grassy field, and putting the tripods, and like, no, they know what they're doing. They are doing this every week or every month. And this big comrade come to us and say, hey, come on, come, put us in a car for 9 people, about 20 people in the car, and say, we're gonna come closer. So we go driving closer to the rocket, and it's about 10 minutes before the ignition. And as we are going in the car, like, Tim is sweating. I'm looking at Tim, and he is like disturbed. And I'm like, Tim, what's going on? He says, I'm sure we're gonna bleed from our ears. So I'm a little bit nervous, we're going, and we are passing the rocket. As passing the rocket, and then behind the rocket there is like a heap of ground, and the car just go behind the heap, and the height of the car is the same as the height of the heap. And this was their spot where they look at the launch from like behind a tree almost, yeah? And then we hear the walkie-talkie, and somebody's shouting, and it's like, and he's like, oh, they caught us. And I can understand that they say that there's too many newspapers or too many reporters today because it was like a special international delegation. They said, you have to come back. This is 3 minutes before ignition. So we are passing back around the rocket, and the rocket already is, there is the system where the steam is coming out. So we are going through this cloud. Tim Dodd is like passing. and we are going, no, he also says this story. His story is a little bit different, so he doesn't like me say this version of the story. But I loved him, yeah, I love him. So we go back, and by the time we go back, we step out of the car, and the rocket is igniting. And as they fly to the space, we go to a pub, and we meet the people who would turn the key to ignite and to launch the rocket, and we drink moonshine with them, and get a little bit drunk. With the technicians who look like miners from Ostrava.
Moonshine, moonshot, it's, you know, it's all lunar thematic. Fantastic, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 1 minute left. We heard 2 incredible stories, and I wanted to say something that my landscape archaeology professor once told me, and she said, Sarah, do you know what the best way of studying past civilizations is? And I said, well, obviously it's archaeology, so dig in the ground. She said, no, look up at the stars, because that's landscape, that doesn't change, and when we look up, we see roughly what our ancestors would have seen thousands and thousands of years ago. And it is very true that the stars are always going to be there, the space is always going to be there, always inspire us, but the journey to that isn't easy, and it's actually what, you'll pardon me, you know, it's the archaeologist in me, but it's what Seneca the Younger said in Hercules, non ad astra mollis et terris via. There's no easy way from Earth to the stars. And I think that this isn't even a hiccup. This is just an inspirational step on the journey to get to the moon and beyond. And what is important is to be interdisciplinary, not to pitch humanities and arts versus hard science, but to really be on this together and look at what actually connects all of mankind and all of our knowledge. And I think that Yemi and Karim have beautifully done that and more. Thank you so much.
Thank you.